Level 1, the Cheska. You're 16, and Moscow is the kind of city that will swallow you whole before you even realize it. A city where 16-year-olds who've dropped out of school, with no job or future in sight, get lost amid the background noise of a country still trying to figure out what it has become in the wake of the Soviet Union's collapse. You're standing in front of a subway station with nothing of note in your pocket, facing a future that feels like a blank wall. And a man approaches you in the way that men in charge always approach children who have nothing, casually, without haste, as if he's doing you a favor even though he doesn't have to. Like any 16-year-old, you want to make money. There's no arguing that. You nod your head. He's just saying one thing. Be here at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. You're going there because you have no other choice. You have to go. After all, going there might be the only way to get from where you are now to somewhere else. There is a minibus. Inside this minibus are stolen car parts, engines, transmissions, parts that were removed from vehicles belonging to others. Just 48 hours ago and now belong to a market where no one asks questions. You have only one task, to help unload these items at a scrapyard. The place reeks of oil and metal, and that distinctive smell created by the two mixing together is a sign that people who aren't you are making money off of it. You work nonstop for exactly 14 hours. At the end of the day, a man comes up to you and hands you 3,000 rubles, cash, neatly folded, real money. More than most people earn in 3 days of legitimate work. Then he says, "Good job. Come back tomorrow." You're coming back tomorrow. You'll be going there every day for 6 months. You unload the trucks. You carry the boxes. You never ever ask what's inside, because asking what's inside is the last thing someone who wants to come back would do. Sometimes there are electronic devices sitting in their retail packaging. Sometimes there's bootleg vodka in bottles with labels that are indistinguishable from the originals. Once, there were even guns. But you carried the boxes with the same expression you'd have while carrying a box of vodka, because maintaining that expression was something you taught yourself. No one had ever officially taught you how to do it. One day the minibus doesn't show up. Instead, a black Mercedes pulls up. The tinted window slides open and a man in his 40s looks at you with that distinctive, appraising gaze of someone who's been watching you for much longer than you realize. "You're trustworthy," he says. "I need someone trustworthy for another job." You're moving upward, and this ascent begins before you fully realize where you're coming from. Level 2, the Boyevik. 3 years have passed. You're 19 now, and the man at Mercedes is a brigadier general, which means he oversees operations in a specific region with specific resources and responsibilities. He's made you a Boyevik, a soldier, which means your job is no longer limited to just moving things from one place to another. Your new task is to help people shift their perspective on their situation. The debtor owes the organization 500,000 rubles. He borrowed money to open a cafe, and the cafe went under quietly, in its own way. Not dramatically, not all at once, but as the days when revenue failed to cover expenses gradually piled up, until the shortfall became too large to ignore. He hasn't made a payment in 3 months. The brigadier general gives you an address and says, "Go and take care of it." You and another child are heading to the apartment in a car that doesn't belong to either of you. You knock on the door, he opens it, and on his face appears that expression seen on people's faces in those moments when the person on the other side of the door confirms a fear you've been carrying inside for weeks. "No," he says. "Please give me 2 more weeks. I'm not ready yet." You won't bargain, because the purpose of this visit isn't to bargain. You grab him by the collar with both hands and drag him into the hallway, pressing him against the stairwell railing. There's a 7-story drop below, and then you say, "You have exactly 3 days, not a day more, not a day less. Next time, I'll let go of your hand." 3 days later, he paid off the entire debt. He sold his car and borrowed money from his mother, his sister, and anyone else who would lend to a man with no other options. As for you, you don't wonder how he found the money because it's none of your business. You collected the payment, and your job is done. But there are also those who don't pay. A week later, another debtor turns up. He owes the organization 300,000 rubles, hasn't made a payment in 6 months, and has now vanished, disappeared into the city. This is something people do when they're afraid, and they haven't yet realized that vanishing isn't the same as running away. The brigadier general assigns you the task of finding him. Using the elimination and pressure tactics you've learned to execute without wasting any moves, you track him down to his cousin's apartment in the suburbs. You knock on the door. She opens it. When she sees your face, she tries to slam the door shut, but it won't close because first your foot, then your body slips through the crack, and before you know it, you're stuck inside. And the speech that followed was not just a speech. The message was very clear. As the brigadier general said, "Let this serve as a lesson." You're breaking his arm. You hear the sound of the bones breaking. That sound will echo in your memory for years to come, a sound you won't easily forget. The sound he makes and the sound his cousin makes as he watches from the corner are the same. They've frozen in place like witnesses to a sudden act of violence, not out of fear, but because the body can't process something it's never encountered before. Tell everyone what happened when you ran away, you say. Then you go outside, walk down the stairs, get in the car, and go back to your life as if nothing had happened. This is the life you have to get used to, the life you chose. It chose you too, just as the choices you made at 16 led it to choose you back at 19. This choice is made with a certainty that leaves little room for turning back. On the way back, you don't feel guilty. You don't feel satisfied either. You've crossed that line so many times that it no longer looks like a line to you. What this situation brings is precisely the absence of any emotion. The Brigadier General will start taking you to meetings as well. You'll see how the regions are divided up among men who speak cautiously and imply everything they don't say. You'll see how payments are made to the police, not in a dramatic way, nor in envelopes handed out in parking lots, but through arrangements that have been going on for so long they now seem like routine business. You're no longer just about physical strength. You're training in a field without a set curriculum. Level 3, the Brigadier. You are 26 years old and have been serving as an active duty soldier for 7 years. During that time, you have not had a single uncorrected failure, nor have you had a single interaction with law enforcement that could have resulted in any adverse consequences for them. Pakhan perceives this in the same way that those at the top of the hierarchy perceive events, not through direct observation, but through the accumulation of reports from those observing on his behalf. He promotes you to Brigadier General because you deserve it and are worthy of the organization. You're now running your own business. This means you're responsible not only for the day-to-day operations, but also for any potential negative outcomes. This takes your relationship with risk to a whole new level, one unlike anything you've managed before. Your operation is a smuggling route. This organization imports stolen luxury cars from Germany, BMWs, Mercedes, Audis. The vehicle's documents are destroyed, and new identities are issued through a process involving border officials who are offered bribes, essentially a pretext to overlook the documents without careful scrutiny, using forged paperwork. The route runs through Poland to Belarus and on to Russia. Your job is to coordinate the drivers efficiently, maintain relations with border guards, and deliver the vehicles to the buyers in Moscow. Since these buyers have paid for the privilege of not asking questions, they don't ask any questions. Each car is sold on the black market for 2 million rubles. You sell 20 cars a month. You take a 5% commission on each sale. This means that 2 million rubles ends up in your pocket every month, unreported on any tax documents because you don't have any. These risks are not merely theoretical. The FSB monitors border crossings with the meticulousness of an agency that has been patrolling the borders since its inception and has developed considerable expertise in this field. If a shipment is seized, you will forfeit your commission. If a driver is arrested and chooses to cooperate rather than remain silent, you could find yourself in a situation with serious consequences. You can achieve this by rotating drivers as part of a schedule that makes it difficult to predict patterns. You regularly change the routes each time. You never use the same intersection twice in a row. And a month later, a driver panics at a checkpoint. There is something in his face, his hands, or his stiff posture that the officer picks up on and suddenly flees. This is the worst decision he could make because fleeing is a silent confession. The guards arrest him. The car is impounded. 2 million rubles vanish in an instant in a moment of panic. Pakhan calls you. Take care of this immediately. You'll find the driver's mother and sister not because he intends to harm them, but because they are the most effective means available to him for sending a message to someone who is currently in custody and trying to decide how much to reveal. You're sitting in their kitchen. You're drinking tea. You're being so polite that it actually makes them uncomfortable. Your son has made a huge mistake, you tell his mother. If he cooperates with the police, you'll never see him again. What I'm saying isn't a threat. It's just stating a fact. The driver accepted the plea deal. 2 years. The names were not disclosed. The issue was resolved by applying what you've learned is often more effective than violence. The credible implication of a threat of violence directed at something the target values more than themselves. Level 4, the strategist. You are 32 years old and have been actively involved in smuggling activities for 6 years. By deliberately keeping the accounting records vague, you have generated so much money for the organization that you cannot accurately calculate the total amount. Pakhan brings you into his inner circle. This means you are no longer just a brigade commander overseeing a single operation, but a strategist, a problem solver, someone who sees the whole board and moves the pieces accordingly. The organization is turning its attention to cybercrime. Russian hackers are operating at a level of technical expertise that has drawn international attention, and Pakhan wants a portion of the profits they generate for the organization. Your job is to make this connection. You find a group in St. Petersburg, young antisocial men in their early 20s. They're carrying out ransomware attacks against European companies, and they're executing these attacks so consistently and effectively that they've not only become genuinely wealthy, but have also put themselves in real danger. You approach your leaders at the cafe they've chosen for the meeting. This means they already know you're coming, which means the organization's intelligence apparatus is functioning properly. You're not threatening them, because threatening them wouldn't be appropriate. They could simply shut down their operations and set them up again somewhere else, and it would just be a waste of everyone's time. When you say partnership in this context, you mean exactly that. You continue doing your business as usual, and you pay us 30% of every transaction. In return, we provide you with protection, government connections capable of resolving legal issues, physical security against competitors who might target your operations, and all the credibility that comes from operating under the umbrella of an organization that has been active in these environments for decades. He evaluates this in the same way that intelligent people evaluate offers that also serve as ultimatums. That is, after giving the matter careful and brief consideration, he accepts it because he finds it reasonable. There is no other option but to accept it. Within a year of successfully securing the deal, the cybercrime unit began generating 50 million rubles in monthly revenue, and you now find yourself in boardrooms, or settings equivalent to boardrooms, that is, in restaurants, hotel suites, and private offices, where men in sharp suits make decisions about money that doesn't appear on any legitimate balance sheet. Pakhan is also entering the real estate sector. In 1990s Russia, this carried a very distinct and ruthless connotation. The Soviet Union collapsed. State-owned apartments are being privatized under a system that elderly residents, who spent their adult lives under a different system, are unfamiliar with or cannot fully grasp. Just as people are left vulnerable when rules change faster than they can keep up with, so too are they. You're given a building, one with 20 apartments, inhabited mostly by retirees who've lived here since the Soviet era, have no intention of leaving, and can't understand why anyone would want them to move out. They don't want to sell. For this reason, the process begins with natural events that seem to happen by chance. In the cold month of January, the heating system breaks down, and the repairs take exactly 3 weeks. The lobby suffers damage that resembles random chaos but occurs with a certain orderliness. Minor problems escalate into a larger problem with a clear solution. Since the transactions take place through a 3-tiered intermediary network, they are sold individually to buyers whose ties to the organization remain hidden for 50,000 rubles, 100,000 rubles, just a fraction of the actual market value. The organization is buying up all the apartments. 6 months later, they renovate them. Each apartment is sold for 2 million rubles. Profit, 35 million. Your share, 2 million. You're a businessman now, just as a predator in a suit is a businessman. The suit is real, the business is real, but the predatory nature is the driving force behind both. Level 5, Dvorovy Zakone. You are 38 years old and you have spent 20 years within a system that has its own laws, its own courts, and its own code of honor. A system where everything people are willing to die for is, in that sense, real. You were arrested exactly twice during your time in the organization and served a total of 6 years in Russian prisons. In both cases, you refused to cooperate with the investigators. That is, you did not betray your organization to the police. You did this not because you were fearless, but because whenever you weighed the cost of cooperation against the potential benefit, the outcome was always the same. And you had come to this conclusion on your own, long before anyone explained it to you. The Vori vote. The ceremony is taking place in a prison outside Moscow. After all, this organization has always conducted its most important business in prisons. Around you are 15 other Vori v Zakone, who have walked different versions of the path you have walked and bear different versions of the same burden. They are validating your status. You are now one of them. This means you are in charge of operations such as smuggling, law enforcement activities, cybercrime, and real estate manipulation. You have now entered a realm that resembles governance more than crime. Though the line between the two has always depended on the question of who draws it and why. Your body bears a history through its tattoos. The stars on your shoulders clearly indicate your rank to anyone familiar with the system. The spires of the cathedrals on your chest symbolize all the years you've served. And the symbols form a language that only those who've been in this institution long enough to learn it can understand. You are now resolving disputes through mediation. Apakan in Yekaterinburg and Apakan in Chelyabinsk are at war over a region to which both organizations lay claim. This conflict is resulting in so many casualties and attracting so much public attention that it is harming everyone's interests. That is why they are reaching out to you. You're flying to Yekaterinburg. You're sitting in a room where chaos reigns, a room filled with that unique tension created by two men who desperately want to kill each other, but have temporarily decided against it. You listen to their complaints. These complaints concern land, money, and respect, and their weight varies depending on who is speaking. You make a decision. You draw a line on the map. And because you drew it, it becomes real. Both men in the room understand what it would mean to disregard this line. Not just your reaction, but the shared reaction of every vor v zakon, who would interpret this refusal as a violation of the order that makes their own positions possible. This is over, you say. If either of you breaks this agreement, you'll have to answer to all of us. They agree. The war is coming to an end. A brigade commander in Kazan is brought before you on charges of theft. 2 million rubles were stolen from a shipment. This is a violation of the rules that calls for a single response, but the rules also require that the situation be verified before a response is given. The brigade commander is coming to Moscow of his own volition, for to refuse to come would amount to an admission of guilt and carry the weight of a verdict. You sit with him for 3 hours. You ask your questions in a patient and clear manner, ensuring that the person being questioned understands that the answers to the questions are already prepared, and that what is being assessed is whether his responses align with them. You're reviewing the bank transfers. You're listening to witness statements. The numbers tell a story that the brigade commander's explanations cannot change. He committed the theft. He broke the rules. He stole from his own family. After all, the organization is essentially a family, and he knows exactly what that means. The men who mete out punishment to others beg just as desperately when it's their turn, with almost architectural coherence and helplessness. He is offering to pay double the amount he stole. He swears on his children and his family. The law does not include a provision requiring double payment. There is only a single penalty for the crime he committed. You're giving him 24 hours to say goodbye to his family. 2 days later, a single bullet is found, skillfully placed. This is the only mercy the rules allow in this situation. You're the one taking on this burden. You're taking on the whole burden. This is what authority at this level truly consists of. Not money, not respect, not walking through places where people step aside and gaze at you in awe, but the weight of decisions that end lives and the obligation to keep making those decisions with the clarity and consistency that the institution demands. Furthermore, you are subject to restrictions that no one below your rank can fully comprehend. You are legally barred from owning property. You cannot open a bank account in your own name. You live in a perpetual shadow, the flip side of constant authority, and at any moment, you are a target of the organization's enemies, and sometimes even of the organization itself. Level 6. The International Operator. You are 45 years old, and Russia has become a country where men like you are kept under control rather than being welcomed. A country where the FSB, operating under a government that seeks to monopolize the kind of power you represent, has made staying in Moscow a gamble that no longer works in your favor. You are moving to Cyprus. This tiny island nation has served Russian capital for so long that its infrastructure for accepting such capital has matured and is now in line with privacy principles. You are not retired. The work you do is carried out on a large scale. You coordinate money laundering operations through banking systems that provide a reasonable separation from their legitimate functions. In Milan, you meet with representatives of an Italian mafia network over dinners where the food is excellent, but the real topic of conversation is never explicitly mentioned, discussing cocaine routes through the Balkans. In Tirana, you meet with Albanian crime bosses and coordinate the logistics of heroin shipments stretching from Afghanistan through Central Asia to European markets. You are a node in a network that spans continents and comprises organizations that have nothing in common other than a mutual understanding that cooperation is more profitable than conflict. The fortune consists of hundreds of millions of dollars spread across offshore accounts, shell companies, and real estate assets in 3 different countries. These assets are registered in the names of legal entities, which requires a comprehensive forensic accounting investigation to establish their connection to you. But you can't go home. Your daughter is getting married in Moscow, and you're watching the wedding alone via video call from a room filled with beautiful furniture in a villa in Limassol. The wedding is taking place 4,000 kilometers away in real time, and this distance isn't just a geographical one. It's the distance between the life you're living and the lives of the people you love but can't reach. Level 7, the hunted. You are 50 years old, and the European Union has compiled an investigation file that required cooperation among law enforcement agencies in 11 countries and spanned 8 years. Interpol, meanwhile, has issued a red notice containing your name, photo, and a list of charges: money laundering, extortion, attempted murder. This list accurately reflects some of your actions, but it falsely gives the impression that these could be brought under control within a legal framework. You're moving to Dubai, which has no extradition treaties with the jurisdictions that are after you. This makes it safe in a certain sense, just as a room with a single exit is safe, until of course someone comes in through that exit. Isolation is like a punishment in and of itself. You cannot travel freely. You cannot visit your family. You live in an attic guarded by armed security guards, in the peculiar silence of a life where most of the things that make life worth living have been stripped away. Other Vori living in exile were found dead, poisoned in hotel rooms, shot in parking lots, killed by car bombs in cities with no connection to their crimes. The FSB never forgets, never forgives, and never stops. You know this because you've worked with them long enough to understand their patience. This patience is institutional and therefore effectively infinite. Level 8. The end. The scene takes place on a Thursday at a seaside restaurant in Dubai. The light reflecting off the water has that distinctive golden hue of late afternoon, and you're eating alone, because your life now consists solely of eating alone, a series of solitary meals eaten in safe, unobstructed spots. Your bodyguards are outside at their posts. A waiter brings you tea. You drink the tea because you've drunk tea in restaurants 10,000 times, and the routine of this action is so ingrained that it cannot be interrupted by doubt each time. 20 minutes later, a change occurs in your body. Your body notices it before your mind does. A blurriness at the edges of your field of vision. A numbness spreading from your fingertips toward the center. A heaviness not caused by fatigue. Poison. This word comes to your mind with a clarity that is almost soothing, because it marks the end of uncertainty. Your guards take you to the hospital within 7 minutes, but it is too late. The toxin has spread through your bloodstream at concentrations that cannot be reversed by the means available to doctors, or likely to anyone. You will die in 3 hours. The official cause of death is cardiac arrest. This is technically accurate in the sense that official causes of death always find a way to appear technically correct. What matters is that everyone knows it was the FSB, or that it could have been a rival organization, or that it could have been someone from within your own ranks who decided it was worth paying the price to take over your position. This uncertainty is a message in itself, because uncertainty is a method institutions use when they want to communicate without having to account for their actions. This is the Bratva. You cannot retire from here. You cannot negotiate your exit. You will never reach an age where the institution releases you into an ordinary life with your wealth intact and your obligations lifted. You survive as long as the combination of your usefulness, caution, alliances, and luck persists, and when one of these elements fails irreparably, the machine absorbs that failure and continues. No one mourns as mourning requires. They notice the void. They begin the process of filling it. The machine has no pause setting. It has always been running, and it will continue to run long after everyone currently inside it has been replaced, by someone who started at 16, standing next to a man with nothing in his pockets, approaching them outside a subway station with a question that isn't really a question. You want to make money, and the story begins again.